Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Hear Me Out, the show where we discuss hard topics through a Christian lens. I'm Chino.
And I'm Kongwa.
And we are going to be your hosts tonight.
Now, last week, we talked about whether the benefits of college are worth the costs. We heard from students as well as professors and financial aid director Jeff Francis.
If you haven't seen it, go and check it out right after finishing this episode. This week, we're diving into a bit harder of a topic, so get ready.
We are discussing the question, is abortion ever okay?
We will be discussing pro-choice and pro-life stances in difficult situations to see if the issue is really black and white or if there's a gray area.
So stay tuned and hear me out. What are your thoughts about abortion?
I am against it just because, I feel like, you have a life, there. And so, if you kill that baby, it's you're killing one of God's plans on earth,
Mm-hmm.
I fully disagree with abortion. I'm pro-life. Well, you can say in a sense that I am pro-choice. I am pro giving the baby an option to life, whether that be adoption or foster care, or just don't kill the child.
I believe that if you're going to do something, that you need to live with the consequences that come after it. Whatever it is in life, I believe that whenever you take on a certain thing that you should do, that you should take on what comes after it also.
So you don't believe that there's any circumstances that could ever justify abortion?
I can't justify one bad act by killing another for the very poor choice of the male.
I personally could say that I would support them because they were put in a situation that they didn't want to be in. They were put in something that they shouldn't have to go through. Should they fully abort the baby? Possibly not.
It's not that justifies it, but it's I understand why. But at the same time, it's I think about myself, what if my mom aborted me, I wouldn't be here. And I love my life, I love being alive and living for God.
I fully believe that abortion is a tool used by the enemy to wipe out the next generation of who may rise up against him. You never know who you're carrying inside your womb. Why would you want to kill that off?
God knows every single life on this earth, and he writes every single person's story.
We have heard the general ideas from your classmates about abortion. We'll be back in the studio after this short break to further discuss the topic.
Hey everyone, my name is Luke Pennington, and I'm a junior here at SAGU studying biblical studies, and I'm just super excited to be here on the set of Hear Me Out and just ready to have a good discussion.
Hi, my name is Hannah Smith. I am about to video call in to Hear Me Out. I am 26 years old. I live in Wichita Falls, Texas, and I have a couple of friends at SAGU, so I'm excited to be here.
Welcome back, everyone. You guys have met our participants, Luke and Hannah Smith. Thank you both so much for joining us. I don't know about y'all, but I am ready to get this started. You guys ready?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So our first question, Hannah, I'll ask you. Luke, ladies first, always. To start out, what does pro-choice mean to you, and where do you stand?
Pro-choice means to me that an individual has the right to choose what happens to their own body. I don't, I talked about this earlier. I don't think that pro-choice and pro-life should be boxed the way that they are. I think pro-choice just, it doesn't mean pro-abortion. It just means that they have a choice of what they do with their body, and I am pro-choice.
Cool. Luke?
And I believe that there's definitely common ground to be found in both beliefs, both parts of this argument. And I think that for me, pro-choice, the label for that is that they prioritize the belief in self-autonomy. And I believe that for pro-life, that there's definitely some common ground there, because there's definitely a argument to be made that self-autonomy is still important. No one wants to intrude on anyone's self-autonomy, a woman's right to choose for her own body. But I think where there's a difference and a breaking away is that the definition of what is the woman's body. And I think for me, pro-life is the answer that there's a separate life involved in that equation. And that's how we need to base the choice.
Okay. Hannah, at what point, if any, would you say abortion is not okay?
I think there's a lot of gray area in that, because if we put a limit on abortion, then, what about if there is health issues for the woman at a pretty late date in the term? Whose life do you choose at that point, So I think, nobody goes into making the decision of having an abortion lightly. I don't think people are out there just abusing that access. So the only time I think it would be not okay is if it was like someone's only form of birth control. Like they're just out there having abortions every other month, which I don't see as ever the case. I think most people that do have abortions, it's a very hard decision to be made. So really, the only time it's not okay, I think, is if someone's using it as their form of birth control. Other than that, I think if we put a limit on it, we're putting the woman's life at stake. So,
yeah, Luke.
Well, at what point, if any, would you say abortion is not okay? Just answering that question, I believe that boils down to when it becomes another life. And for me, the science, I believe, points towards that. As soon as there is that zygote and there's a life beginning, and they have their own DNA formed already, and as soon as there is conception, I believe that another life is involved. At that point, under normal circumstances, where there's no extraneous, no case of involuntary conception, of sexual assault or anything like that, I believe that there should not be an abortion after that there is conception. So yeah.
Okay. You could just actually keep going on that, and what your full basis is on your stance on abortion.
Okay, yeah. So for my basis for my stance on abortion, I like to believe in the sanctity of human life. Obviously, that comes from my view as a Christian believer, and that all life has value. And I believe that like I said, as soon as the egg unites with the sperm, there is a new life created. You can look at the research and the data, and there's already DNA that is completely different from both of the parents as soon as those two unite. And I believe that's where life starts. And for me, at that point, it's no longer just whether this is the mom's choice, but there is another life involved in that. And I believe that, like I said, under normal circumstances, that should be where we draw the line.
Thank you. Hannah, what is your basis for your stance?
The basis for my stance is kind of simple. I think that the fact that I am a woman and I believe that we should have bodily autonomy is definitely the number one thing. The basis of my stance, I also think that, there is life there, but abortion is done past the 12-week point, and which is obviously not true, but most places that you can go to get an abortion, they're not going to perform it on 12 weeks or more. Most women don't even know that they're pregnant until the 4 to 7 week. And by that time, they've got a huge decision, like their life is totally changed. And this is normally when it's like unplanned pregnancies. So like young women and teens. And I think this falls a lot on like our healthcare and our sex education system, which is totally flawed. There's a lot we don't know about, you know, when you're pregnant and how that works and all that. So I don't know, I guess like really the basis of my stance is that I'm a woman. And so I feel like I have to speak up for other women.
Yeah. Understandable. So I'll have you answer our next question. If a woman got pregnant due to rape, do you think that she should have the choice about carrying that child?
Yeah, I mean, my whole argument is that there should be a choice for every woman, whether they want to or not. I think rape, somebody has already stripped away their bodily autonomy about what they wanted to do. So they should have every right to choose what happens next. They didn't ask for that. And regardless of if it was rape, they may have not asked to be pregnant. They didn't want to be pregnant. And I think that's, again, that bodily autonomy, they should have the choice to make that decision for themselves. So yeah.
Yeah, first I'd like to clarify that I definitely believe in a woman's right to self-autonomy. I think it's something very important. I know that it's hard as me, a guy, you could possibly say like, you know, what do you know about that? But it's like, I definitely want to come to that understanding that that's important to me. And that in the case where of someone being raped, that's such a terrible thing. That's already a tragedy that's occurred to someone, and they've definitely had their self-autonomy violated. I believe that there's definitely a hard decision to make there, and that choice, even though there are alternatives to that, there's the case of going through with the pregnancy and offering the child up for adoption. That's a very hard choice to make, but I would like to just have it laid out on the table that there are those options, that alternative to that. And I do believe that in the case of rape, that's definitely would be an exception to that law. That of violation.
So our next question is, if abortion is okay in some situations, why is it not okay for all situations? Because I think you both have kind of said that there's very seldom situations where it really isn't okay. So Hannah, do you want to answer that question?
So the question is, why is it okay for some situations and not for others? Is that the question?
Yeah, or why is it okay for some but not for all?
Well, I think like in the cases that you've presented so far, like rape and women's health, those would be the cases where I think it's obvious, like that should be their choice to terminate or not. In the stances where it's not okay, I did touch on a little bit of it. I think, you know, if that's somebody's main source of birth control and they're obviously abusing that access, then, you know, that's when I think it's not okay. I think there's a lot of stances where, again, like young women and teenagers have this unplanned pregnancy, and I think the choice should be theirs to have.
Yeah, talking about those special situations, there's definitely the scenario of the mother's life being at risk. And at that point, it's not only the life of another child, life of a child at risk, you'd also be putting the mother at risk too. So that's definitely a gray area, if you will. To where if the mom's life is in danger, then that's definitely a time to consider abortion, because that would be putting both lives at risk. So,
Can I add something as well?
Yes, please.
I think that like another situation would be, you know, like I said, like teenagers and stuff, but also just like young women that don't have the familial support or financial stability. I mean, I know that adoption is a choice, but I have had siblings who have been in the foster system, and it is not somewhere that you want to send your children. It's not our system is very broken, and that's not necessarily the best choice for a child to go to. So if you don't have, again, that financial stability to support a child, you don't have the family around you to support a child, then that's another, like, I think, instance where someone should have that choice again too. I don't believe that, I can raise this child or I can send this child out to a system that is poorly, structured. So
Yeah.
I think that's just another instance where kind of fights for that approach.
Thank you for adding on to that. This has been an awesome conversation. Thank you guys so much. Both of your guys' perspectives, I think, have brought a lot of light to, such a big, gray area, and maybe, given some perspectives for people that have had such a black or white kind of view of this. We are going to take a quick break and step back from our conversation of abortion. So we'll see you guys in just a few minutes.
And now it's time for Dumb Debates with Tim, the part of the show where Tim has a dumb debate. So without further ado, Dumb Debates with Tim.
I was at McDonald's.
Okay.
They gave me 3 extra straws.
Man, give me one of those.
I'll take one.
Isn't it really cool how straws have like this one big hole that you can just like suck stuff out of and like even like spit wad?
Just one hole, just...
Straws have no holes. These are openings.
It's a hole. It's
No,
round like a hole.
This is an opening,
It's
sir.
a classic cartoon drawing of a circle that is a hole that something goes in and out of.
Yes, but this is a consecutive hole. This is not a hole. This is an opening.
But it's a hole.
No, this is what's called a pipe.
No, but pipes have holes in them that things can go through, like water, soda.
That's true.
But this is not a hole. A hole doesn't have an exit.
Oh, that's also true.
A hole has an entrance.
Boom, now it's
that
a hole.
doubles as an
Now
exit.
it's a hole, if that's your theory.
You're just crushing. Why are you crushing the straw?
It's a hole. Things go in and
What
out
did
of
that
it.
straw ever do to you?
It's made out of plastic and it's hurting turtles. So
Wow, that's true.
In the end,
Regardless.
So now,
and I digress.
I digress.
Now it's putting a hole in our society.
Oh, that's deep right there. Because
That is
not
deep.
only is there a hole in here that you suck things through, it's a hole in society.
Okay, hold on, wait,
just...
pause. You both kind of look like Jesus. You ever think about that?
Never once occurred to me. Ever.
Okay, you know what? Go down in the comments and y'all tell me which one of these men look more like Jesus, Stephen or Braden. Got Stephen on my left.
Who do
I
you
got
say
Braden
I
on my
am?
right.
Who do you say I am? I'm Jesus.
And I'm Batman.
All right, we're done with this. Let's go back to HMO.
Hi, my name is Eden Bates. I'm a sophomore at SAGU and I was supposed to be aborted. So when my mom was pregnant with me, she went to her first ultrasound and they did some normal blood work and the results came back saying that there was a very high percentage chance that I was supposed to have Down syndrome. So the people who took the blood work actually advised my parents to have an abortion, and my parents stood firm on the fact that they weren't going to do that because this was their child and whatever God had planned, they were going to stick with that. They advised them to go to a consultant and they said, no, we're not going to do that. They said, well, legally, we have to send you somewhere so that you can get all of your options for how you want to go on with the pregnancy or if you even want to go on with the pregnancy. So they sent them to a counselor. The counselor talked more about abortion, saying that there were going to be risks within the pregnancy, could affect my mom and could endanger her as well, saying that it'd be very hard to raise me with Down syndrome, saying that there would be a lot of complications with raising a disability child. So my parents went to another ultrasound and they did an amniocentesis, which they only do if the baby looks like it's going to have Down syndrome, cystic fibrosis, or spina bifida. So it's a very important test. Once they took her amniotic fluids, everything came back fine, that I was going to be born perfectly normal with no disabilities. So I would just have to say that I'm very much pro-life, or at least pro-life for this circumstance of whether or not they say that a pregnancy is going to have a complication, because you never know what could happen. I mean, I was supposed to have Down syndrome for a couple of months and then tests came back negative for that. So you never know what could happen in a pregnancy if you carry it to term. So God can work miracles, and I just don't see why anyone would take that opportunity away from him to work a miracle like that.
Welcome back, everyone. So we've heard from fellow students about the tough subject of abortion. Where should our morals lie, and is there a gray area?
To wrap it all up, we're going to go over to positivity with a prof to see what Dr. Teresa Blakney has to say about our discussion.
Well, I want to thank you for allowing me to have some comments about this most important debate on the subject of abortion. I took some notes as I was watching this debate, and I actually observed some pretty interesting things. I want to try to pull us back to a biblical perspective on this subject. And so the first thing I'd like to mention that I noticed both of the people in the debate said was this idea that a woman has complete control over her body. And as a Christian, I want to come at this from the angle of the Bible, which is actually when we give our life to Christ, our bodies are not our own. Paul talks about it in 1 Corinthians, and he says, we've been bought with a price. Our bodies are not our own, and we should honor God with our bodies. So this idea that we know what's best for our bodies, not God, that's not actually a biblical idea. Everything we do with our bodies should honor Him. The second thing I wanted to talk about was this idea that a child is not a blessing, but a burden. Biblically, children were always a blessing. Anytime anyone was given a child, it was a blessing from God, never viewed as a burden or a problem or something to get rid of. So if we're going to look at abortion from God's perspective, children are a blessing, not a burden. And also the idea that life is something we decide when it starts and ends. God is the author of life. He's the only one who can produce life, and any life is valuable to Him, whether the life happens because of rape, whether the life happens because of any other thing. God is the giver of life, not us, and so we don't get to choose when life happens, when it starts, or when it ends. And so I wanted us to kind of pull it back from our societal way of thinking to what the Bible actually says about how God views our bodies, how God views children, and how God views life.
Thank you guys for hanging out with us tonight. We'd love to hear what you guys have to say about this topic.
So leave a comment below and keep the conversation going with your family and friends.
We'll see you next week right back here on Hear Me Out.
Bye y'all.